This podcast may not be suitable for young listeners.
Steve Lilly, journal entry number 6, Squatch Operators. Sarah. Hunting Bigfoot for 3 years now. Lewis and I have been successful. You already know that we're paid in cash, meaning the money is tax-free. I told those boys the day I picked up the third payment I wasn't going to pay no taxes on this stuff. Do whatever you want, Steve, was the answer I got. It struck me as odd they would say that, so I followed up with the idea that if I added this money to my income, I would be required to disclose how I acquired this cash by the federal and state governments. The quick reply was that they didn't give a damn if I paid taxes or not, nor did they care if I reported the income from their organization. I didn't know the name of the organization anyway. And if I disclosed why I was being paid, I would be committed to a mental health program. Well, I thought they were right. Arguing with these errand boys was pointless, so I decided right there and then I would just bury the money for a later date. I don't know why I even brought the subject up. Sometimes my mouth runs in front of my brain. By year 3, Lewis and I had a good stash and we kept the money in a safe place. Damn sure not in the bank. Neither of us knew where the other kept the cash, and this was good for both of us. If it wound up missing someday, we couldn't blame the other. We stayed busy for over 2 years with calls to exterminate these creatures, coming once, sometimes twice a month. Many ops were multiple kills. You can imagine that business was good. The pace they set for us was perfect. Head out on an op on Thursday or Friday, and we'd always be home by Sunday, sometimes home the same day. Then 2 weeks to recover, live a normal life. We liked the arrangement and the schedule. It's like they knew us real well. During the spring of the 3rd year, the calls became less frequent. There was no call from late March until late May. We had become accustomed to going out during those 2 months. Was the gig over? We stayed busy and trained, honing our weapons skill as well as nurturing our physical and mental health. Many days and hundreds of rounds of bullets were spent on the weapons range. Lewis was good with the mass weapons of destruction. That M249 saw gun was the junk. Point and squeeze the trigger. You're going to tear something up, especially at close range. Lewis acquired other weapons that I will disclose in a journal entry later. We practiced with all of them. He was even getting good with the bolt rifle, which made me proud. The Marine Corps taught him to use iron sights. Now he was looking through a scope, and it opened up a whole nother world to the big man, and he was a natural. We began an exercise program to stay lean and mobile. Joining the local gym was a great move for both of us. Combined, we lost 50 pounds in 2 months. More than that, we felt better and the energy level went through the roof. Fishing was our mental health regimen, and the crappie were biting in every lake within 200 miles of us. We hit Grenada Lake or Enid as much as we could. He and I both grew up crappie fishing these waters, but I had stopped doing these fun things when life and bills took over. That's where we were on that warm April day of the 3rd year. And this is when I admitted to Lewis that something was bothering me. You ever see things before they happen, Lewis? I asked while jabbing another minnow on my hook. You mean see the future? He asked back. Something like that. You don't know exactly what's going on, but you have a nagging feeling about something that won't go away. If you're talking about the psychic stuff, Steve, no. I don't have those thoughts. That's satanic shit, bro. It's voodoo stuff. Well, maybe so. I lowered the jig next to a tree stump and I got a bite. For years, I was told I had the sight. I never understood what I was being told. I didn't believe in that stuff. But there were times when I would see things in dreams or while walking to class in high school. Later that day or even that night, the event would happen with few differences in my seeing. The events were minor, like a kid dropping his tray in the cafeteria or one of my teammates fumbling the football in the fourth quarter, losing the game for us. It was seldom, but it did happen. I never mentioned it to anyone but Sarah. Sarah was our nanny, our housekeeper, and our cook. She raised my 3 brothers and me. While my folks were running the business, there was no time to raise a family. Sarah was hired not long after I was born. My parents built a section off the big house just for her, and she lived there until my youngest brother left for college. She told me she was done with raising white people's children, so she moved across town to live with her sister. That lasted for 2 years until my mother, who had been through 5 housekeepers trying to find one who measured up to Sarah, called her and begged her to return. I later learned that Sarah was constantly getting crossways with her sister and that family. She wanted peace and quiet again, so she accepted my mother's offer and moved back to the family house. She was in her late 50s by this time and enjoyed being back without kids to raise. Her only responsibility was keeping the house and cooking. My parents gave her a place to live, and they paid her really well, and she was very happy. What's more is my brothers and I loved her and were thrilled to see her back in our lives. Not that she ever went away for good. We spent several Sunday afternoons with her and her family at her sister's house. But to know that she was living in our home again and that she was happy made everyone feel complete. We were teenagers and at home during a roasting summer. My brothers and I were made to work at the family business in downtown Memphis. My father was a cotton broker and seller. Much of the cotton he bought and sold was ginned in our facilities down on the river. So my brothers and I spent our summers working in the warehouse, unloading and loading cotton coming and going. After work, all 4 of us boys piled in a company truck and we headed back to the big house. On the way in, we stopped on the porch and we sat in the shade and we drank cold water or sodas set out by Sarah. 4 white teenage boys and a black nanny sat on that porch every day the summers laughing and having a grand time. She was interested in our lives, always asking about everything we did that day at work and what we would make of ourselves and just talk about life. More than I can say for other adults in our lives. We loved her for it. These are my favorite memories of my youth, not with my father fishing or playing baseball. It was the times that we spent with Miss Sarah. On an especially hot day in July when I was 16, I had my first sighting or seeing that actually meant something. A man was walking across the street with a dog on the leash, and in my vision I saw something huge and blue swallow him up. It was like a monster. It shocked me, and I went silent, not something I did often. Sarah noticed right away. I saw her looking at me from the corner of my eye. She went quiet as well, and she just stared at me. I stood and was headed into the house to shower with the weight of this vision on my mind. I mean, this was real. It was real like it had happened in my mind, but I knew it was going to happen. She caught my sweaty arm as I walked by her. "Stay with me," she whispered, so as to not be heard by the others. I looked down at her rocking on that porch. She saw the torture in my eyes. "You boys get inside and clean up before supper," she said. "I got pork chops thawing and I want y'all clean to sit down at the table." When it was only her and I, she walked me to the swing at the end of the porch. A ceiling fan whirled above, cascading superheated air down on us. It was a minute before she spoke. "What did you see, Steve?" Sarah asked. She knew what had happened. I don't know how she knew. And pushing my fingers over my eyes to squeeze the tears out, I told her I saw something happen in my mind. I don't know why this image went through my mind, I said. I saw a man injured or killed with his dog. I was not prone to think about gruesome things, and she knew that about me. What happened to the man in your thoughts, she asked. He gets swallowed up or crushed under something blue, like a monster or a machine, I said. He and his dog both get sucked in and crushed. I want to get that out of my mind. You won't be able to get it out of your mind until it comes to pass, she said. We sat in silence. Feeling a little better, I told her I guess it was my imagination. But my imagination was wild as it was. Knowing something is real is different than dreaming something up. This seemed real, as if it had happened or was going to happen. Sarah gave the porch swing a push with her feet, and the chains holding it up creaked as we swung. The sound and the movement was comforting to me. Sarah always knew how to calm us boys down. She had done it superbly from our infancy. Sarah looked at the traffic passing by. A man and his dog appeared across the street. Man and his dog on a leash, walking towards us on the sidewalk. Short, staggered steps was all the old man could do. The dog waited on him with patience. It was a good dog. It was him. Same clothes, same colored dog, same walk. It was him, exactly the same as I saw in my dream. Should I go see about the man? I didn't know what to do. Sarah saw the man too. She turned her head to me and smiled. Why was she smiling at me? I got up and walked off the porch to get a closer look. We lived in a big house in midtown Memphis on a moderately busy street. It was a ways out to the street. I waved, but the man didn't notice me. I was frustrated, so I jogged closer to the street, almost to the gate. I waved again, trying to get his attention. There was no plan here. I still didn't know what to do, and I felt like an idiot. But I had to get his attention. Why was I doing something so out of character for me? He stopped and faced our house across the street and was looking both ways. And then he stepped off the curb. He had not seen the Memphis Transit Authority bus turn the corner, now charging down the lane where he stood. A big blue Memphis bus. My vision was playing out in front of me. The dog was looking at me now, and then the dog saw the bus. It turned to get the man back up on the curb, but the old man was disoriented. The bus sped up. Tires were skimming and rubbing on the curb on the sloped four-lane boulevard. Black diesel fumes rose behind the big blue machine, and the diesel roared. Why was the driver not slowing down? That's why. He was not looking at the road in front of him. I knew why. They memorized their route so well they don't need to even watch the road. The bus was 5 seconds from rolling over the old man. I was too far away to get there. The dog barked, and the diesel engine roared, and the cars passed going in both directions. It was madness, and I was about to watch it all happen just as I had seen it in my dream. Launching myself over the gate and sprinting into the busy street, I was seen by a car barreling down on me. Tires screamed like a banshee. The bus driver heard it, and then he saw the man, but it was too late. He stood on the brakes, and more tires roared against the hot asphalt. Things started in slow motion for me. In that instant, I locked eyes with the dog, and I willed him to pull the man somewhere, anywhere away from that bus. I think the dog saw me as its savior, and it ran straight at me. The old man was lurched forward as the bus roared by, stopping a full bus length ahead of the old man. He had been inches away from being crushed on that scalding asphalt. I ran to the street to help the man up, stopping traffic, waving my hands wildly. The old man looked up. He was bloody and confused. The dog licked his face. Helping him to his feet, I walked him to my side of the street. "Whew, that was close," the old man said. "Yes, it was. Your dog saved you, mister." The old man looked at me with tears mixing with the blood from his skinned face, and he said, "He is a good dog." He was stable now, and the big retriever was leading the way. I released my grip under his arm. Sarah had not moved throughout the whole ordeal. I sat down beside her on the swing. "You look better now, Steve." "How did I see that coming?" I asked. "You aren't the only one here who has that ability," she said. "Your mother and I have it too. We talk about it together. Neither of us know where it comes from, and for us it's not something that happens every day, but it does happen. There's nothing else to learn about it, Steve. The visions will come, and you're going to have to be wise enough to use it for good. Talk to your mother about it. She will fill you in on what she knows." "I can't talk to her about that," I told Sarah. "She could care less about us, at least not like you do. I'm done with talking about it. I hope I never have another one. And what if I can't get there in time? What if something happens and I can't get there in time?" Sarah looked at me with the most peaceful look on her face. "Things going to be what they're going to be, Steve. We wouldn't have this gift if we were prevented from seeing it when it happens. You'll know what to do. And if you don't, that's the way it is. Time comes and goes. The earth keeps spinning. People show up here and then they leave. It's not our place to understand it. Rest in the fact that you're a seer. There's nothing more to know." She put her arm around me, and I hung my head. I was drained physically and mentally. "Go get cleaned up. I got supper to make." "You should have been our mother, Sarah," I said. "Hush your mouth and don't let your mama ever hear you say those words. She loves you. Go get cleaned up." Sitting in the boat with Lewis, I had the vision again. It had come to me for the third time. The first was as I showered after work a week ago, and once in a dream the next night, and now while I was having a good day on the lake. In my mind, I saw a woman. She's a middle-aged woman, attractive and slim. No specific features that I could recall other than her dark, almost black hair. She was on the ground, in the leaves, being pushed around like a rag doll. I walk towards her and a beast hovers over her. The beast is on its knees and the woman is obscured by the mass of this thing. It is a Bigfoot, I have no doubt. I've seen enough to know what it is in my dream. I can't see what it's doing to her other than I see her body slung from side to side. Her head is whipping in one direction, vanishing behind the nasty thing, and then reemerging on the other side. Her long black hair follows her head as she whips back and forth. The beast turns to look at me and then he roars, and the vision goes away. Since that episode with Sarah when I was 16, these visions have happened 4 times in my life. This was the 4th. Each time I'm seeing something happening that will happen. Of the 3 previous visions, I was able to help with only 1. I just told you that story. The other 2 visions came and went, never happening in my sphere of influence. Decidedly, the episode with the old man and the dog was an anomaly and had never been repeated. I think Sarah was wrong. I wasn't a seer. That first time was just a freak incident. I never told her about the 2 that came and went, but this one bothered me though, and I needed to call Sarah. We caught our limit before the sun went down. We headed back to the trailer park, stopping at a burger joint for beers and food. Sarah answered on the first ring. "You having the same seeing that I'm having?" It was her first words. "I don't know. What are you talking about?" "It's a white woman in her 40s. Nice figure, jet black hair. Something big roughing her up? Yep. What we gonna do, Steve? Well, I'm not doing anything. I don't know who this woman is or where she lives. Hell, she might live in Alaska for all I know. Sarah waited, and then she asked, "What does the area look like in your vision?" I thought about it for a minute, and I said, "Well, it looks like everything else around here." "She's close then. Let's wait. Whoever gives these sights to us is going to let you know," said Sarah. "I think it's all a bunch of crap, Sarah. You know I've had others and nothing went down. I spent 2 weeks trying to figure it out, stressed out and worried. Finally, I had to let it be." "Why didn't you tell me about that?" Sarah asked. She sounded pissed. I didn't answer, and then she asked me about the thing that was slinging the woman around. "Steve, it looks like a demon has this woman. No other way to explain it, but I ain't never seen a thing like that. It's blurry in my dreams. It has to be a demon." "Oh, it's a demon all right, but it isn't supernatural. It can be killed." "How do you know that, Steve? We're dealing with dangerous forces here." "I know what I'm talking about. Listen, I gotta run. I love you, Miss Sarah." "Steve, come see your folks. You know they miss you," Sarah said, almost pleading. "You know that story," I said. "Believe this, they don't want to see me." And there was a pause over the line. I was about to hang up the line, and Sarah said, "They want to see you, Steve. They're just like you. They don't know where to start." I flipped the phone closed. All that happened on a Sunday afternoon. Well, it was now Wednesday, and I was running the prettiest weld you've ever seen on a big truss we had spent the last 2 days putting together in the jig. I finished the weld just as I ran out of rod, flipped my hood up, and I yelled, "Money!" I crawled from under the truss while some boys began to rig it and move it to the paint bay. The day was almost over. I took up a broom to sweep the area clean for the next day's truss. That night I had another vision. It came in a dream. When I woke from the dream, I was sweating and shaking. Whatever was happening to this woman was bad. I figured this vision was real. At 3:30 a.m., I sat at my table drinking coffee while Lilly watched me from the sofa. Something about the dream was specific. It was there. It was a sign that had words, or was it a voice? Closing my eyes, I concentrated, and I could hear the words. Must have been a voice, and soon the words were clear. Anagrid. Anagrid? What the hell does that mean? I doubted, and then listened to the voice in my mind say it again. Anagrid. A green highway sign stroked with white around the edges flashed in and out of my memory like a flashcard. The letters of the word were similar, but I couldn't see it. It had been raining in my dream, and the word was partially blurred. Later that day at work, while sitting in the break room for lunch, some guys were bragging about catching fish on a popular lake close by. It was Grenada Lake. Maybe that was it. Why had I not thought of that? I wrote both words down on a set of plans laying in front of me, and the letters matched. They just weren't in the correct order. That had to be it. Maybe I just wanted that to be the answer, but I could see the road sign now. Grenada Lake. I had no doubt now, but what was I supposed to do? When I got home, I looked over the map of that area. Nothing stood out. Nothing would stand out. It was a damn map. I had to be there to know. I called my boss. He said no worries about me taking Friday off. So the next morning at 5 a.m., I was rolling down I-55 south to Grenada, Mississippi, with zero ideas regarding where to go when I got there. I trusted that whoever was talking to me in these visions would keep on talking when I got there. Those questions would be answered from an unlikely source, though. Now south of the town of Grenada, I turned east on Highway 8 to drive the long loop around the lake. Seemed reasonable to me. My truck rumbled across the Schooner River Bridge, and I sat at a stop sign in the Gums community wondering why I had wasted a valuable day off making this drive. Nothing seemed right. Coffeeville was to my left where I could finish my drive around the reservoir. Miles of nothing was to my right. And where there was nothing, there was usually a Bigfoot. I took a right driving for several miles, constantly making turns down gravel county roads where I would soon be lost. Just ahead, I saw a green sign, and it had big white letters that said Grenada Lake pointing to the left. Across from the sign was a gravel drive. Suddenly, something felt right. I pulled into the drive, and a half mile later, I came to a small white house that had obviously been there for a while. It was kept in good condition. A yard was cut out of the wild weeds and vines that grow in the area, and behind the house was a big hardwood timber stand. With the engine running, I sat behind the wheel and I looked the area over. I saw a drape pulled to the side in the front window covered by the porch. The front door came open and out walked the prettiest woman I had seen in 10 years. Jet black hair neatly shrouded over her shoulders. I didn't understand what had brought me here and I didn't care, but I was in the place that I needed to be. Now I had to decide how I'd start this conversation. The woman took care of that for me. She approached the truck and then walked to the window, already down as if she knew me. "Are you here from the Bigfoot organization?" she asked. My eyes must have been bugging out of my head at that question. How was all of this going to fit together? "Bigfoot organization?" I asked. "Yeah, I called you 2 weeks ago and reported my problem. Your people said someone would be here to investigate. You're late, but you're here." She looked normal to me. There was no evidence in her appearance that she had been roughed up by a Bigfoot. I fully expected to find a woman in the hospital or even a body when I finally found where I was supposed to be. "I'm not with any organization," I said, "but I know about your problem. Maybe I can help." She looked at the ground trying to understand. She had made only one call, and now here was a man not from that group, but seemed to know what she was talking about. Finally she spoke. "Well, come on in. I'll explain the whole thing to you when we go inside." At the kitchen table, while we drank Coke, she gave me the history of her place. The family had lived here for 100 years. They knew the boogers were there all the time. They had never had any trouble with them. The family, at least 4 generations, had lived in peace with these things. She had moved back to the place years earlier to take care of her mama, who died last summer. The place was hers now, and she kept the place, and she planned to stay. The week after they buried her mama, strange things began to happen around this place. She went through the list. The item that caught my attention was the booger that had been trying to get in the house. This is always alarming evidence. She had seen shadows at her bedroom window at night, and this thing was turning doorknobs and slapping the side of the house. All of these behaviors were evidence that the beast was getting more brazen and becoming obsessed with the inhabitants of the house, namely her. I understood why. She was a beauty. She went on to explain that she had seen these things since childhood. None had ever been aggressive. Now things were different, and she wanted it to stop. Now, I'm a straight shooter when I have the seldom opportunity to actually speak to someone being harassed by these things. I give them the truth. "You have a problem," I said. She interrupted me. "No shit." "Okay," I said, "do you understand that it's not safe for you to stay here?" "I'm not leaving," she said. "I was hoping you would help me, but you aren't from the Bigfoot group. Maybe I need to call them back." How was I going to explain this? Tell her about my visions? She would kick my ass out that minute. No, I wasn't going to go that route, so I made up a lie. I said I wasn't with the Bigfoot group, and that's true, but I have friends who were with that Bigfoot group, and when they get busy, they call on me to investigate. But I go farther than a stupid investigation. Do you know what I mean? No, she said. Once I find that varmint, I kill it. Then there are no more problems. She looked me in the eye. I thought she was going to reveal her animal rights position to me and berate me for talking like that. But I was pleasantly surprised and a bit turned on when she said, "How soon can you kill this thing?" My expression never changed, but inside I was turning flips. "Let me have a look around and I'll let you know. Do you have a place to stay until we get this done? I have a partner. I need to bring him in on this." She said, "I don't have a place to go unless it's a hotel in town, but I'd rather stay in my house." "Let me look around your place while we still have daylight. I'll tell you what I think later. Until then, stay inside. I'll be back a little bit after dark." I then asked the usual questions and gathered as much intel as I could. This woman gave me surprise after surprise. She knew where their den was and she could show me. I declined. I pulled out the map of the area and I asked her to show me. It was less than a half a mile behind her house. This was getting easier by the minute. A door rattled somewhere in the house. We were not alone. The woman stood, and then she smiled over my shoulder when her daughter walked into the kitchen. She had the same black hair as her mother. She had been asleep in another bedroom. Had her little 5-year-old daughter been an adult, her and her mother would be mistaken as twins. She crawled into her mother's arms, and they both sat at the table. "This is why I want you to kill that thing," she said. "It's taken a special interest in this one. I'm not the one it's after." Well, I almost disagreed with her because I knew what the truth was. But even so, my resolve doubled at that moment. I was going to make an example of this thing. I knew a clan lived in these woods. I also knew when there is family, it's difficult to kill all of them. Chances were there was only one bad apple, but just in case, I was going to make sure none of them ever messed with this house again. I walked straight back from the house and the place she pointed to on the topo map. There should have been a structure. Nothing that big can live in the woods and not leave evidence. But right now, I couldn't find any. Water was trickling in a creek somewhere close by. With wildlife and tracking, always go to the water. You can pick up a trail there. But when I got to the creek, I didn't just pick up a trail, I found the whole den. The creek bank had been washed out, and I now stood on a short bluff. Just below me to the left was a well-worn path from the creek halfway up from the bank. At the end of that worn path was a hole dug into the side of that bank. Hell, it was a damn cave. There was no need for me to see it. I knew what was in there. I learned earlier the creature had been coming every night for 2 weeks. There was no reason to think that he would not come tonight. The weather would be perfect. A front had just moved through. A high-pressure system hovered over the south, and there would be no clouds. The moon was full for one more night. I eased out of the area while those nasty creatures slept in their hole. I explained to the woman what I had found and that she should go about her normal routine that night. It was made very clear that she was not to come outside no matter what she heard. She reluctantly agreed. I didn't think she'd come out for anything. My truck needed to be hidden. Anything different about the place would throw them off. So after parking it a quarter mile up the narrow drive, I geared up. Shotgun, pistol, machete, and my Bowie knife. I could go light tonight, and I knew exactly what I was going to do. It would be dark in 30 minutes. Walking back through the front yard, I saw the yellow lights inside the kitchen window. The woman was putting supper on the table. The little girl stood in a chair singing a song to her mother. I could hear it. So could the beast. It was dark now. I set up in a spot close to the den, but not in line with the track the big male would take to the house. I settled in and I listened. The noises from the animals emerging from the den soon filled my ears. Two crossed the creek. I guess they were on a hunt. One came up the bank and walked right past me. I wanted to step out and take his head off right there, but he wasn't the problem animal. Another crawled onto the bluff and walked the other way. They were all males. Finally, a large female followed the last one down the bank, giving him hell for something. She was a cranky old bitch, I thought to myself. Soon she returned and went back into the den. None of these creatures matched the size of the nuisance beast. From the description by the homeowner, this one was at least a 9-footer. The creatures I had seen so far were all 6 to 7 feet tall. Big Boy was still in the den, probably catching hell from his old lady like the son had just endured. Then 2 smaller females emerged. They crossed the creek and vanished into the darkness. I was now looking through my NVGs. Everything was green and sharp. I suppose with all the children sent out on their nightly task, only Big Daddy and Mama were left in the den. It was an hour before he came over the bluff, but there was no mistaking that he was the one. At the top of the bluff, he stood straight up. He stretched his legs and looked around as if to make sure nobody was watching him, and he headed straight for the house. Now, you might think I should have killed him right there, but that would be risky. He was a massive alpha, and they do not go down easy. Taking an alpha on close, one-on-one, is not the smartest move you can make, but I have done it. No, I had a plan in mind. I had never used this method, but I had a suspicion it was going to work just right, especially after watching that old bitch Bigfoot Mama henpeck her son. I looked at my watch. Big Daddy had been gone for 10 minutes. He was just getting to the house now, I figured. Now was the time to get things moving. Working my way over to the bluff and in line with the house, I started making strange noises. I made farting noises. My attempt at a pterodactyl call. I even whinnied like a horse and I mooed like a cow. I was making any noise imaginable that didn't sound like a human nor any other animal Mama Bigfoot had heard. And sure enough, I saw her ugly head pop up over the ledge. Just a side note here, nothing looks dumber than a Bigfoot hearing something that it has never heard before. It is the classic monkey attempting to do a math problem. Now that I had her attention, I silently moved towards the house, stopping every 100 yards to do my calls all over again. I sounded like an idiot, but I was having fun with it. Within a second, she appeared in my NVG, slowly walking towards me with that dumbass look on her face. When I could see the lights of the house, I made another series of calls and then I moved left to her flank. I watched her walk by straight to the house and her misbehaving Big Daddy. Big Daddy was there on the back side of the house and he was peeking in a window. I will not describe what he was doing. Your imagination's going to have to take up the slack on that. But believe me when I say, when that old ugly cranky mama caught him, there was going to be hell to pay. She was at the tree line now, and Big Daddy was in full view. It only took a few seconds for her to figure out what her man was up to, and it was a thrill to watch her cover the long distance from the trees to get her hands around his neck. He heard her before she got there. He was obviously surprised, and he stood there unmoving. I wish I could have seen the expression on his face. Unfortunately, my NVGs didn't offer that much detail. But she hit him like Jack Lambert with the Steelers, knocking him into the house. I saw a portion of the house back wall cave in, and then the girls inside started screaming. I wasn't worried, and the house could be fixed. Hell, I'd even pay for it. Big Daddy had his hands full. The girls were safe, and they stayed inside like I thought they would. The fight went on for several minutes. Cranky old Mama was whooping the shit out of that boy. It ended with Big Daddy finding a brief moment between fist hammers where he dropped to all four limbs and he ran into the woods. He ran right by me. I didn't expect it, and that's why I wasn't ready when he was closest to me. Had I been ready, I could have dropped him right there. I made a mental note, always be ready. Mama followed right behind him, and I wasn't going to let her go. NVGs illuminated the area with the bead of my shotgun following her head, and at about the closest point, I squeezed one round off. She dropped and skidded several feet into the leaves. She never moved after that. Damn, I should have taken down that big one when I had the chance, but there had been too many of them to begin with. My plan had worked. Now I'd have to come back and finish the job with the disadvantage of him knowing my scent. Forevermore, when he smelled me, he would remember this night. The scenario I had created was worse than allowing a crippled Bigfoot to escape into the bush. Never leave a crippled in the area. They just get meaner and nastier, and eventually they become man-eaters. But in my regret for the misfortune I had had that night, everything was about to come full circle. Big Daddy must have heard me kill Mama. He knew now that she was no threat, and he also knew a human was in the area. I had not walked 5 paces towards the house when I heard him bulldozing through the trees and brush coming back to the scene of the crime. He was on me before I could turn and get a shot off. I remember laying face up on the ground after he slapped me down, and he stood over me. Drool ran from his filthy mouth onto my clothes. It kind of grossed me out. My shotgun was out of reach, being knocked away with the impact. He reached down, he grabbed me by my arm, and he started dragging me into the woods. The things he was going to do to me were not a pleasant thought, but I knew one thing for sure. He was going to make it last a long time. So I had to think quick. What did I have on me? My mind was a blur. The pistol on my hip drug in the dirt between my body and the ground. The machete was on my back. It was also unreachable in the position in which he was dragging me. But my razor-sharp Bowie knife was free for the taking on my other hip, and I pulled it from the sheath. I was still in an awkward position, and I could not get a good angle to cut this bastard. Every step he took, however, made his left heel lift right by my head. That was going to be my only shot, so I began to time it. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I twisted my body, pulling several muscles in my back, by the way. I brought the knife over my chest, and I turned it, and I cut straight through his 3-inch round Achilles tendon. It snapped like a bungee cord, and it rolled up all the way back behind his knee. He fell with me in his grip, roaring and squalling in great pain, but he never released his grip on me. He pushed himself over on his back, and he started pulling me closer to his head and his mouth. I felt his legs up under me, and I knew what he was about to do. If he could get those teeth into me, I'd stop fighting, but there was no way I was going to be bitten by those nasty fangs. As he pulled, I plunged my knife into his good thigh, and I held on to the handle with all my strength, so that every inch he pulled me, the knife cut another inch into that thigh until he fully let go and kicked me away. My knife stayed in his thigh. That's where he focused his attention. Now that he was distracted by 8 inches of steel throbbing in his leg, I had a chance to look around. I was not far from the house. My shotgun laid over there, but it was too far to run. So I unholstered my 1911 off my hip. I brushed as much dirt and mud off of it as I could, and I pulled the hammer, and I hit him in the face. I walked closer, hitting him 3 more times until he stopped moving. Back at the house, the girls were still frantic. I calmed them as best as I could. I told her not to worry about the damage to the house. I'd get it fixed. After assuring them that the adults had been exterminated, the woman seemed to calm a bit. She preferred to go to a hotel now for a night or two, even though she knew the threat was gone. So we all got in our cars, and I followed her, and I got them settled in, and then I drove back to the house. By 1 a.m., I had 2 heads in my truck. There was no need to discard the bodies. The other Bigfoot in the area were going to take care of that for me. And the other members of the family would always remember what they had found. They would avoid that house forever. At least I hope they got the message. The next day I called the woman. She was already back at the house, and she sounded much better, thanking me over and over, offering to pay me, etc. People are often appreciative when you eliminate something like this from their life, but I couldn't take anything from them. I was glad to get that vision out of my head. The things I had seen would have happened had I not intervened, and thank God I was there soon enough. And so another bothersome Bigfoot was in the books, with a bonus for old Crabby Mama's head at that. Later in the week, I called Sarah and I told her I found what I was looking for and that the disaster had been averted. I went on to tell her I didn't like these visions and I hoped that it was my last ones. Her words have haunted me after that day. "Steve, you can't stop the sight. You're going to have more. You know why? Because you know how to take care of that business. Whoever sends you the visions is going to use you for more good, boy. You be ready when it happens again." I hung up the phone and I laid in the bed with Lilly next to me snoring. It had been a good day. I didn't give a shit about these visions other than I wanted them to stop. Lilly put her paw in my face and we both drifted off to dreamless sleep.